economically. See how we can give them financing. See how we can direct them to where market is. So that at the end of the day, we start now being agents of economic development. The second bit you're doing is seeing how can we unlock access to financing. And I cannot finish without saying this, that the challenge that we have is that majority of our population were unbanked. If you are unbanked, it means you have no capacity even to walk to a bank and get credit. If you are unbanked, it means you have no social capital that can go there and become your guarantor. We introduced Hustler Fund to help correct that market failure. And a lot of us in this room could be asking, tell us, yesterday His Excellency President Ruto announced that we had a borrower who has transacted 814 times to the cumulative tune of 4.5 million. It is true. It is true. And I can confirm it is true because I have numbers, I have statistics, and they don't lie. Why is this true? Let me give you this synopsis so that, and I will end after explaining that. When we took over, when His Excellency the President was being sworn in, we had narration of Mama, for example, from Kikomba, who very early in the morning at 5 has to give her ID to some money dealer at Kikomba market, and every day that Mama is given 1,000 in the morning at 5 a.m. and in the evening that Mama returns that 1,000 with an additional 100 shilling. So the interest rate there you can calculate. So every day this Mama goes in the morning, takes kumawiki, goes home, sells, in the evening returns with an additional 100 on top. You can imagine the kind of business which invest in 1,000 and you have to pay for credit 100 bob as interest. Which kind of markup are you taking home? It's no wonder we have so many of our women who cannot access such financing. So Hustler Funds comes in. This Mama can now borrow 1,000 bob in the morning, goes and buys the skuma wiki, goes and sells, and has 14 days to repay at 8% interest rates. Those are the kind of people that we've been supporting. So this top borrower cumulatively owns a smaller shop, which is like the Kadogo economy, sells those blue band, the blue band margarine of 5 bob, 10 bob. So when we started off, his limit was 3,000 bob. We enhanced one to 6,000 because he's a good borrower and repair. Every day he tells us he goes and borrow some items 6,000, he sells them, in the evening he repays, in the morning he does the same. In fact, he was telling us he has been using Hustler Fund money to bring in sugar. A sack of sugar, according to him, was costing 9,000. So every morning he borrows 6,000, he adds 3,000, 9,000 he brings in sugar because he's selling kadogo. By the end of the day, the following day, again he does the same and saves. So what I try to say, why are we doing this? And this is very important. Because now that borrower who has 4.5 million has now acquired a credible credit rating, which in the near future can walk to any bank right now and will not be asked about title book, will not be asked about logbook. On account of that credit rating, will be given the credit or the loan which he wants. So we've been able to give people collateral which they could not access. That's the major goal of Hustler Fund, because it's giving you collateral away from the conventional collateral. So the population which didn't have, just grow your credit score by borrowing 500 shillings, If you can be trusted by 500 shillings, you can equally be trusted by 1 million shillings, and so on and so forth. So it's not something that you want to really say is not happening. It is happening. It has happened. And for majority of us in this room who do not have means, who do not have property, I will tell you, we are giving an opportunity to start growing your collateral system in terms of credit rating to access you to credit in the market.
Thank you so much. Because of time.
You want to finalize for me?
Because of time.
Okay, give me a minute to finalize. Thank you. So allow me to, or do you finalize for me? Thank you. Give me a minute. I finalize. I just say so, isn't it? Thank you. I say give me a minute. I finalize, isn't it? But if you can finalize for me, so there's no problem.
Give you another time to finalize.
No, I'm just finalizing. So, thank you so much, the organizers of this event. All I was finalizing, and it's just good manners that we finalize, right? Was to say, in such kind of a forum, when we discuss about governance, let's centralize the economic development agenda aspect, and we'll be willing to work together. My department, our ministry is open to bring on board all actors that interact with the population of Kenya. Thank you so much. And on behalf of the president and the executive arm, I cannot leave here before bringing his compliments, because he's our team leader in the executive and is going to work with you. We are open. We work for the private sector. We work for the Kenyan people. And I'm sure where we are headed, it's very bright, and Kenya will overcome all this challenge. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Another round of applause for APS MSMEs. Susan Mangeni talking about the contribution of MSMEs to the economic transformation. She has a lot to say, and we'll have to provide another platform to do so. But thank you so much for your time. We're almost coming to an end of our program this afternoon. This other session is going to be very, very quick because we have some closing remarks from His Excellency Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, former Vice President, as well as former Prime Minister Honorable Raila Odinga. But before they make their speeches, this session is going to be moderated by Honorable Gitonga Mukunji, who is the Chair, Young Parliamentarians Association, and is also the Member of Parliament, Manyata constituency. Please be fast on this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderator. I was telling Baba that she has brought up very strong women. You can see P.S. Mangeni could not even blink when she wanted to finish her speech. Well, Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, Baba, aka Baba, the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, former Vice President, and the convener of this great event, Director Conrad, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of Parliament who are here, all protocols observed, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I will be very, very, very strict with time because I can see we are not doing well. But first, let me introduce myself. Again, my name is Gitonga Mukunji. People say AKA form ni kujituma because najitumanga sana. I am the Member of Parliament of a place called Manyata in Embu County. It is supposed to be Manhattan, but but we cannot pronounce Manhattan, so we say Manyata. And I'm also the chair Kenya Young Parliamentarians, which is basically parliamentarians that are young, below the age of 40 years old. We are close to 71 members of parliament in that age bracket. So I am very proud to be their chair. I'm also very proud to be the moderator of this session, and I will go directly to the panelists or the speech. The people will make the speech. I don't know whether to call them here or to give them the podium. I need to be guided there. The podium? Yeah? Okay, thank you. So in that case, I will start with, where is this? I will start with my good friend, nominated MP, Honorable Irene Mayaka, who is also my Secretary General in Kenya Young Parliamentarian. Please welcome Mayaka with a round of applause. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair. Allow me to ride on the protocols already observed because of time, but also acknowledge the presence of my political leadership led by His Excellency the Right Honorable Raila Omolo Odinga. I don't call him former, I call him the second Prime Minister of Kenya. To also His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka, both of them being my political party leadership. To the leadership of KAS, I don't want to say the full names because I don't know Germany, led by Dr. Annette, of course, distinguished guests, good afternoon. As has been said, my name is Irene Mayaka. I am nominated in the Parliament of Kenya to represent workers by the Orange Democratic Movement Party. And I'm just here to briefly just speak about transformation in the youth leadership space. And I'll just begin by saying that, number one, for us who are young in leadership, and of course we are not the first ones in Kenya, but the number one thing that we always believe in is that for you to even be able to have any level of success, you must have a mentor. And for me, every time I have an opportunity to speak before my mentor, my political father, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, it's a big pleasure. And I'll just briefly tell you one thing that he taught me once when I was in the county assembly. Because I was nominated in the county assembly, but didn't have an opportunity to serve until the last 2 years. Why? Because of an election petition that went on and on. But I remember going to see him one day in the office just after the handshake. And I said to him, Baba, now that you and Uhuru are brothers, how about you speak to him so that this issue can be fast-tracked? And he said to me, and I remember very well, that he doesn't want that to happen, that he wants me to go through that process, because by the time I'm done with it, it will put me at a better place as a political leader than I am right now. That it would harden me and make me a better person. So I went through it, given his advice, and now I am in Parliament. And for that, I always say, always have a mentor that will tell you that it can't be easy. Don't assume that things should be easy, things should be given to you on a silver platter. You have to work for them. And when that is done for you as young leaders, the next step for us is also that we must always push back the ladder to other leaders as well. And because of that, we went ahead, formed an organization of young women, because there's one thing about being a young leader, but there's also another thing about being a young woman leader in politics in this country. But the other day we noticed that it's also not easy being just a woman in politics, as the case of Kawera was. Yeah. So the experience and the tribulations that you have to go through are twice as hard. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that politics is also like a career. So you have to take it seriously. When you're in any leadership space, it doesn't have to be within the county assembly space or the National Assembly space, but any other leadership space, you have to take it seriously. Because politics is a career. You have to get out there, get knowledgeable, hold the hands of other leaders as well, and ensure that you learn how to make your job better. The other thing also that I want to talk about is that we are the voice of the youth in the spaces that we are. When we are in legislation, and I was just listening to PS talking about the young hustler who has been getting loans and getting to the next level. But for me, one of the concerns I have is that we're actually reinventing a wheel that was already working. Because yes, there's a hustler fund, but we also had the Youth Empowerment Development Fund that was working quite perfectly. And that young people didn't need to go to the bank, because why should I get the hustler fund and then the next level I still have to go to the bank? The reason why the Youth Development Fund was created is so that these young people don't have to go that direction, but they can actually get these funds, pay back, and continue in their growth path. And my challenge to PS and his and the space she is in is that they need to go back and have a look at that, because it works very well. Why should the people who were already at a level of getting up to 2 million be told to start afresh, to start getting 500 shillings? It doesn't make any sense. It means you're retrogressing backwards. Yeah, we are in a space in this country where being young has become expensive. Yeah, and as I just conclude, and we need to be the voice of these young people. When we are told that now you cannot get an ID with 200 shillings, that you have to cough 1,000 shilling, the young people back in Nyamira cannot afford the 1,000 shilling. And it's up to myself, Mukunji, and the other young leaders to raise these issues continuously, to be the voice of the young people in this country, and to continue engaging and telling the government when it's wrong, and also to tell the government when it's doing things in the right way, okay, so that we can continuously grow the spaces of young people. And as I conclude, because I'm seeing so many young people in this space as well, challenge us and challenge yourselves. If you want to get into that political space, hold the hand of someone who is there, and we'll hold your hands as well, so that we continuously work together. And also, finally, do not be afraid, because you're the voice of the people, and do not allow anyone to tell you that you're the leaders of tomorrow, because we start now. Even Akina Baba, Akina His Excellency Kalonzo began when they were young people. So nobody should stop you, but also we also encourage our older generation, our leaders who are older than us, other organizations like the KAS, that let us collaborate together, hold hands together, so that we can be able to invest properly in the young people of this nation. I thank you.
Maybe you can give her a better clap, please. We have to support our women in leadership. All right, I'm told this podium should go up. Can I help? No. Okay. Yeah, this is better. I can see all of you now. Now, I want to call Honorable Alex Matere, who is a youth policy expert. Please, you can do a minute and a half, so that Baba cannot, we cannot delay Baba for other things. Thank you. Clap for him, please, as he comes to address.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mukunji. Allow me to stand on the already established protocol, but with special mention to His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka, who gave me an opportunity to serve in his office as an intern immediately after I finished my university education. The theme for this conference is transforming a nation. But when I was given the theme by my friend Nathaniel Akadima, I decided to tweak a bit. And I talked about Kenya in the 21st reality. And the reality of Kenya in the 21st century, rather, is that a young man, whether in Mathare or in Kangemi or in Mukuru or in Seikuru or in Cherengani, where I come from, is more likely to sleep hungry than a young person did in 1963. That a young person in 2023 in Kenya is more likely to miss having an identification card than a young person did in 1963. That is the reality of the country that we are living today. Secondly, is that we have a youth bulge. And thank you so much, the PS for MSMEs, for touching on it. The projection is that by 2050, the population of this country is going to be about 92 million. Currently, the youth unemployment rate stands at 35%. The Kenyan youth unemployment rate is more than that one of Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda combined. That is the reality of the country that we are talking today. To worsen it is that now we have high cost of living. So we have youth that do not have a skill or a training in anything, or those ones who even have don't have access to any form of employment or any form of income generation. And we expect them to get an education, to get a skill, to get a training, and also provide for their young families. That is the reality that we are living in today. Third is that every generation is called to stand up for something that matters during their lifetime. For Tom Mboya, Masinde Muliro, Pio Gamapinto was the freedom and liberation of this country. For Raila Odinga, in absentia, with due respect, Gitobu Imanyara, Mukisa Kitui, it was for safeguarding our democracy and multipartyism in this country. For our generation, as the young people, it's about the emancipation of the young people from shackles of desperation, destitution, and hopelessness. Standing here, I am hopeful that we will stand firm and ensure that that is done, and that the future generation have a better future than the present that we are currently having. Lastly, because I'm also cognizant of the law of diminishing returns, I'm a great football fan, and Barcelona have a motto, a rallying call, and they say we are not just a team of great stars, that we are more than a stadium full of dreams, that we are more than the goals that we score, and that we are more than the trophies that we have won. Thank you so much.
That was a wonderful speech by one Honorable Alex Matere. I now want to call upon Honorable Frederick Okango. He is a spokesperson Azimio One Kenya Coalition. Welcome, my brother, Honorable Okango.
Thank you so much. His Excellency Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, who is the Wiper Party leader and our principal in the Azimio Coalition Party. Of course, Raila Amolo Odinga, our coalition party leader, who is outside briefly. First of all, I'm very happy and delighted to be participating in this inaugural conference of Transforming a Nation. I'll be here for less than 5 minutes, my good friend, but I'll only say 5 things. The first one, you cannot transform a nation like Kenya if you don't adopt one of your smallest units of administration as the primary and basic unit of accelerated transformation. This government today has ignored the smallest unit, where majority of the young people are, where the majority of the young leaders are, and they are not doing anything about it. We have been told of stories of Hustler Fund, but we have not seen transformation from billions that we're being told that has been expended on the Hustler Fund. Secondly, I strongly believe that for you to transform a nation, you must engage the young people, their leaders, and the old as well. Because statistics shows us that in this country today, majority of the people are the young people. If I look at this room, I can tell you majority are equally young. And therefore, if these people are not involved in the planning, budgeting, and implementation of this transformative agenda, then you're not going to transform a nation. Number 3, I am very privileged, and I've been given opportunity by those who, when they were young, they did everything possible to transform this country in their own right. Baba Raila Amolo Odinga, when he was young, he managed and tried in the transformation of the multi-party democracy. When we were just having lunch down there, he was giving us a story of the young Turks of the 1990s. If you read the history of His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka, when he joined politics, I think he was less than 25 years that time. He rose, became a member of parliament, became a minister, became a vice president, and I think those are living testimonies for us young people that we can take. And finally, this country is a very interesting country. While the people who are our friends trust it and live in it and enjoy it, the very people who are the natives today as we speak are wishing that in fact maybe they were not natives of this country. Why? Because the people that are in office today told us that when they were going for a transformative agenda in the election, they told us that going first to transform the lives of the young people. They brought them together and said that if they manage to get into that office, the first thing they'll do, they'll ensure that they create employment for these young people. And I speak for majority of the young people, and particularly those who have an opportunity to be in positions of leadership, like myself. We say that going forward, even as we talk about transformative agenda for our country, we must be involved, we must be engaged, and lastly, we must be part and parcel of the transformative agenda, whether outside or inside a government. Thank you.
Maybe you can give him another round of applause. Thank you very much, my colleagues, and I will also not take a lot of time. I first want to say what Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association is, because it's very important for this topic of transforming a nation. And Kenya Young Parliamentarian Association, KYPA, is a bipartisan organization made of members of parliament, both in the National Assembly and also in the Senate. And key word there is bipartisan, meaning we have members from both the ruling coalition and also the opposition. I want to say that being a young leader is something that is a noble duty. And there is one thing that cuts across the young leadership in any part of this world, that we can make mistakes, we can try things, we can learn and unlearn things as we move on, as we are getting prepared to even bigger opportunities of leadership. And I believe one of the call I've always told the young members is that you don't have to comply with your seniors. I am in the government side, but whenever there is an issue, I have to stand out and say what is in my mind. That is very important. When the opposition also have a problem that we as young leaders are not complying with, it is always important for the young leaders in these associations and political parties to come out and speak the voice of the people or what is right for everybody. I want to say that young leadership is also a serious challenge, because we are meant, and there is always something called sugarcoating when it comes to accommodation of young people in this country. It is extremely hard for young people to get into political positions. It is also extremely hard for young people to get in the corporate level of leadership in this country. And it is a simple thing of maintenance of status quo that people look of ways to have their lineage and their fellow selves getting into those positions. But I want to say it is all not lost, because the few of us that get into these leadership positions, we have to stand strong and stand against all the chaos and atrocities that are meant to derail young people to get into positions, so that we can actually make a better community and a better society. And I want to touch something that I know Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka is dealing with in the bipartisan talks that involves our electoral system. I have heard many people say that our electoral system is actually not right, but it is the high time we got it right. And Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, as the co-chair of the bipartisan talks, we are hoping you bring something that is going to solve that thing once and for all, so that young people can get chances to get into leadership positions. There is always deliberate efforts to suppress the leadership of young people, and it has come even into the university level. And one of the things that we have taken as young parliamentarians is to correct that. We need to go back to the voices of our university students having something to speak. The leadership of this time does not really reflect what we used to see before. Myself, I started my leadership in the University of Nairobi, in the leadership of SONU. Many of my members started there. But right now, we have a system that is using some sort of delegates, and we no longer get the voice of the university student, who should actually have a voice for the benefit of this country. If you speak to Honorable Raila Odinga, Honorable Orengo, and the rest, they will tell you how important that voice was when there was Moi of this world. There is also something I want to touch on, which is the mismanagement of institutions touching with our young people. And I'm happy that the government has recognized that, and there are deliberate efforts to correct the mismanagement of institutions touching with our young people. NYS, one of the institutions that used to touch lives in the 90s, these days is a shell. But we need to actually empower these institutions so that our young people can be able to do better. I was very happy to listen to PS Mangeni, whose department actually is at the heart of the young people. I wish you well, and all those deliberate efforts you guys are making, we have to hold you into account. I have one proposal for you. Hustler Fund is a good thing, but we cannot remain at 500 shillings or 1,000 because it will not actually help a lot. We need to get into million. We need to get into 500,000 so that our young people can be deliberately helped to grow economically. And I believe that is something that you have to consider and you are considering. I want to say that when it comes to opportunities, we need to empower our youth wings in the political parties. Because political parties in Kenya, and I hope I don't get in trouble because of this, they are owned by individuals, and they are not owned by the young people. And that means that for you to get anywhere, you have got to be in the right books with the bosses who own these political parties. That is actually a retrogressive thing that we should actually correct and move forward from there. Because while we are talking of improvement of our economy, our democracy, and we are very loud saying about democracy when it comes to general elections, but nominations and running of political parties is the biggest scandal we have in this country. We have to correct that. Let the democracy of our country start at the political party level so that we can improve the democracy of our country. On economy, yesterday, before I came for the State of the Nation, I was attending a farmers' conference. There are some farmers that I have helped to get water project, and I had called them for a meeting. I want to tell you that that meeting was attended by very many people, but all of them were above 60 years of age. Not even one single young person. That means our youths are not participating in agriculture. Our youths don't have an opportunity to participate in agriculture. And it should shock many that 70% of our population is young people, but they are not being productive in production of our food. And I want to say that, and I have advised the government many times, that we have to have means of getting our young people to farms. We cannot all be hustlers lying around. We cannot all go to border sector. We have to have our youths being empowered and being given opportunity to get into farming. When I was sharing lunch with Honorable Raila Odinga and Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, we had a very interesting conversation of ensuring that we get our people to consolidate land so that that land can be productive enough and our young people can be used in the production, and then many people can be given the affordable housing that we are giving, that is actually a government plan, and be able to grow our economy together. And I think that is something that I propose that can be done. In conclusion, I want to say that African leadership has always been born from struggle. In 1963, when we were getting our independence, the struggle was about freedom. And we had Mau Mau and everybody else who fought for that. In the 90s, where we had birth to Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, Honorable Raila Odinga, and many others, we were struggling for democracy, and we struggled. Now, we have another struggle to have our economic freedom. As young politicians and young leaders, we are taking that as a fight that we have to win. And thank you very much, everybody. We are going to continue engaging in this conversation. I want to say that, yes, this conversation has been organized by KES, but this is a conversation that should be organized by the government of Kenya. And this is a conversation that is supposed to be organized by Kenyans, because it is us who have the problem, and it is us to solve our problems. All we need is to be supported by our diplomatic corps to solve our problems so that we can move on. Asante sana, Mungu awabariki. Thank you very much. Is it on me?
Yes, because you are the moderator. I want to collect one issue. No, just 2 minutes.
Okay, 1 minute. Very quickly.
Yes, yesterday I talked about Kenya at 60. It is always good when you are a reader, you give the correct figure. We have transformed from 1963 to where we are. It took me 6 months to get an ID card. Today, and I was walking 20 kilometers to my DO. Today, you just go to the Huduma Center and get a vote. So, Honorable Matere Tafadhali, where are you?
Okay, thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you. You can clap for me. Thank you.
Another round of applause for our young leaders. They shared their take on what could be done to transform this nation and how the citizens could benefit from the economic transformation that the country is experiencing. Without wasting much time, the next speaker, a guest speaker that I'm welcoming, he's a Kenyan politician who was the 10th Vice President of the Republic of Kenya from 2008 to 2013. He also served in the government under the late President Daniel Arap Moi as the Secretary of Kenya African National Union Party, and that's between 1980 and 1988. He also served as the Assistant Minister for Works, that's between 1986 and 1988, and Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly between 1988 and 1992. He has also served, for your information, as the Minister for Foreign Affairs from 1993 until 1998, as well as the Minister for Education 1998 to 2001. Our guest has also subsequently, under the rather late President Mwai Kibaki administration, he was the Minister, was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I beg your pardon, again from 2003 to 2004, and then Minister for Environment from 2004 to 2005. He was unsuccessful candidate in the 2007 presidential election, after which he was appointed Vice President by the late Mwai Kibaki. We can say much about him. He's the party leader, Wiper Party, and something that he doesn't know is that he's my ward mate at Sekuru. Sekuru Ward, and His Excellency, I know I have been transformed. So he cannot recognize me, but I want to appreciate him because when I was very, very small as the Vice President, this time he was in Serena and my mama just passed on, and so we ran to Serena and he helped us clear the bills and we were able to bury our mom. I know you don't remember, but that really happened. So it's my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. Welcome, sir.
Yeah. Well, you see, even from Sekuru, you are beautiful girls. Well, what an afternoon. My friend there was a little agitated about transformative achievements. I'll give you a joke before I make my actually written submission, because it's important for us as a nation, together with our development partners and international friends. A friend sent me a tweet yesterday, and they said, just sample this, because it tells you the state of hopelessness that we are faced with as a country. He said, I'm going to get my burial certificate and keep it in my pocket because by the time I die, this thing will be costing 1 million shillings. What does that tell you? And yesterday, listening to President Ruto and talk about reality checks, this is the reality of our times. Incremental unemployment. But lest I go astray, let me thank you, Madam Annette Swander, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. I am not as good in German as my brother Raila Odinga, and you hear that. And also acknowledge Caroline Cantor, Deputy Director for European and International Cooperation. We set off for CAS, not the Kenyan CAS, we CAS, but KAS. The headquarters in Berlin, as you know, for extending to me this afternoon's invitation to speak to this distinguished assembly. And I thank you, my brother, my senior brother, Raila Molo Odinga, who is our party leader and our team leader, for agreeing to come and do the closing session. I know that this was organized at a very high level, and yesterday, Kenya Kwanza team may have, without them knowing, or whether it was deliberate, they managed to downgrade this very important assembly, because we are all in the printed. I assume before this time these things go out, everybody will have said yes, we'll try and make time available. But if you are represented by my little sister Susan, and how you have grown, so be it. A closer examination, ladies and gentlemen, of the history of caste, they were here, which was founded on December 20th, 1955, by members of Germany's most successful political party, the Christian Democratic Union, CDU, is quite revealing. There was widespread agreement that no party, no man or woman would usurp democratic institutions ever again after the Second World War. There was widespread agreement that the best option for Germany was, quote unquote, a social market economy, a combination of free market capitalism, strong government regulation, and a comprehensive welfare state. The CDU success can be attributed to two men, Konrad Adenauer, the party's first leader and German chancellor from 1949 to 1963, and whose legacy of freedom and democracy this wonderful foundation Konrad Kass bears. And Ludwig Erhard, widely regarded as the father of Germany's economic miracle, who served as Adenauer's economics minister before succeeding him as chancellor in 1963. Combined with the United States stimulus package to Europe, which was then dumped, the Marshall Plan of 1948, which brought extensive investment to Europe, leading to the war-ravaged continent, indeed in West Germany's resurgence. The embrace of the transformative spirit of national dialogue was at the heart of Germany's post-World War II economic and political success, a model that is studied on a regular basis worldwide. Of course, I was asked to talk about transformative dialogue. I therefore consider today's topic that I've been asked to remark upon, transforming a nation through dialogue, both timely and relevant in light of current events in our country. National dialogues are used as plural, also known as popular consultations or national conferences, bring together representatives from various political parties to discuss issues and challenges associated with the political transition. They have grown in popularity in recent decades as a means of achieving long-term peace and resolving key concerns such as ethnic and religious discord, as well as electoral mismanagement. These national dialogues can be used to build trust, increase participation, and forge consensus among national actors and the civil society in critical political, economic, and social decisions in the aftermath of an election or in the aftermath of a conflict. Guatemala, East Timor, Nepal, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, Niger, more recently, Mali, and Kenya. Afghanistan, Iraq, and Yemen are among the countries that have conducted NDP's national dialogues in various forms. I have personally mediated national dialogues in Somalia, in South Sudan. In fact, in the case of Somalia, because their problem was ethnicity, clanism. They're all Muslim, all Muslim. But because they belong to small sub-clans, they have been at war with each other since the fall of Siad Barre in 1991. So I said the Mkambo Uko anaitwa clan anaitwa Digli Mirifli, perchance to be able to get them out. We did the best we can to negotiate the conflict with Somalia, and as you heard, even as we speak, our men and women in uniform, mainly men, are still in that neighboring country. I also was able to do some work in South Sudan and DRC. In fact, with regard to Burundi, with the late Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, we even imposed economic sanctions to try to get Warundi hawa na Rwanda waishi kama ndugu na dada. It didn't work. Then I realized economic sanctions don't actually work in the majority of these conflict situations. Of course, we did these mixed but mostly positive results. I can state unequivocally that I am a staunch supporter of this mode of discourse in order to prevent political conflict caused by ethnic and religious disharmony, as well as electoral malpractice. You will recall after the fall of the Berlin Wall, Madam Annette, she's in your country, when President Reagan famously told Mr. Gorbachev in Moscow, Mr. Gorbachev, bring down this wall. And with it, the collapse of communism and the bipolar confrontation. And then, of course, the end of the Cold War. So the world had expected that we would then all reap what was referred to as a peace dividend, amani kokote. But nobody knew that a new form of conflict was emerging based on religion. So we have now had hot wars based on what people believe. Now, Kenya's national conversations before and after independence arrived with both acrimony and compromise. From the European settlers who petitioned the British Secretary of State for colonies for representation in the Kenya administration in 1905 to the establishment of a legislative council, popularly known as Legico then, and his first all-European sitting on August 17, 1907. My brother Raila is very good with this history. I listened to him the other day when he was launching the Mau Mau Foundation, very detailed on how the Lunatic Express, among other things, brought about change. In 1954, Chief Colonial Secretary Walter Coutts' commission investigated ways for Africans to elect their representatives. As a result, the elections ordinance was amended to allow for the election of 8 African representatives from 8 electoral areas, with the first elections held in March 1957. The Lennox-Boyd Constitution, which increased African seats by 6 and provided for 12 specially elected members to be chosen by Legico, was closely followed by the 1960 Lancaster House Constitutional Conference, which increased Legico seats to 65, set aside 33 for Africans. Does this ring a bell, ladies and gentlemen? We're still wrestling with the Supreme Court advisory on ability to bring into operationalize the 2/3 gender rule. Lancaster II, held in 1962, was a more ambitious dialogue that resulted in the establishment of a bicameral legislature comprising a lower house, House of Representatives, and an upper house, the Senate, with members elected by universal adult suffrage, as well as 7 regional assemblies, known then as Majimbo, to ensure maximum decentralization of government powers. During the 3rd and final Lancaster House Constitutional Review Conference in February '63, an agreement for Kenya's independence was reached and came into effect on June 1st, 1963, a day we celebrate today as our Madaraka, or Self-Determination Day. 6 months later, the Union Jack was lowered for the last time on Kenyan soil at midnight on December 12, 1963, at Uhuru Gardens, Nairobi, to great jubilation, and then the colors of our national flag unveiled. The dream of a free and independent nation was realized after 58 years of agonizingly acrimonious, ego-bruising, and time-consuming national dialogue between European settlers, Africans, Asians, Arabs, and the British government. From the scramble for Africa, which ironically took place in your wonderful country again, Berlin, a conference of 1895, the young protectorate evolved into a colony, and finally an independent republic led by Africans. It is critical for this distinguished gathering to reflect on our history, even as the younger ones, the youth budge. 70% of you in this room are aged below 40, in fact 35. So we do these things in order to pass it over to you, so you know where we have come from. as a renowned Spanish-American philosopher George Santayana wrote in his book, The Life of Reason, The Life of Reason, as part of his series, Great Ideas of Western Man, Western Man, in 1905. I quote, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." We should never repeat colonialism in our country. And Mr. Julius Malema is in town. He speaks with such passion about these things. Kenya's foundation has generally remained stable. But over time, political developments, including 24 amendments to the Independence Constitution, seriously undermined both our socio-economic and democratic processes. This included the dissolution of 7 majimbos and the unification of 2 houses to form the unicameral legislature in 1966, with a lot of serious political ramifications. The proclamation of a de jure one-party state by the National Assembly in June 1982 crowned it all. Autocratic rule, ethnic favoritism, and ethnic violence, particularly in the provinces of Nairobi, Coast, and the Rift Valley, and pervasive, indeed, systematic corruption. With the repeal of Section 2A of our country's constitution in 1991, Kenya entered a new phase of dialogue that culminated in the return to multipartyism in 1992. At that conference, actually, I was the master of ceremony when we were decided to repeal. Mzee Moi said, he was amazing. He was such a mobilizer. He got all of us to say, we don't want any amendment, anything, and then he himself stood up and said, we must accept it. 6 years later, in November 1997, the minimum reforms package through the Interparliamentary Group, famously known as IPPG, carried out parliamentary reforms that included amending Public Order Act, Cap 56, to facilitate freedom of assembly, amending Section 33 of the Constitution so that the nomination of members of Parliament was based on party strength and including the opposition's voice in the electoral body's makeup, the IEBC. This had hitherto been the president's exclusive prerogative. The historic victory of the National Rainbow Coalition, and my brother and I were key in this in the general election of December 2002, as well as equally significant concession of defeat by the presidential candidate of the ruling party, then our brother Uhuru Kenyatta, were, in my opinion, promissory products of the IPPG dialogue. I find it noteworthy that Kenyans were voted at the time the world's most optimistic people before and during the election. This was in accordance with the Gallup International Annual End of Year Survey, which involved interviews with over 67,500 people in 65 countries between November and December of 2002. However, the sentimental optimism was fleeting, as several agreements in our famous MOU between the coalition members, right? And we were signing. My brother Raila and I were on the rainbow side, and Mudi Awori, the late George Saitoti, and then Kibaki and Malwa, and you know that famous thing. Had that MOU document been respected, this country would have grown in leaps and bounds, would have avoided the outcome of the 2000 elections, for example. Was following a High Court ruling, the recommendations made the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, the CKRC, during the Bomas Constitutional Conference process, which favored a parliamentary system, were discarded. As a result, the public and a section of government officials became dissatisfied with the Mwai Kibaki administration. In a referendum held on November 21, 2005, Kenyans in 7 out of the 8 provinces overwhelmingly rejected the government-sponsored proposed new constitution. We then used to refer to it as the Kilifi draft. And we used to blame Attorney General Emeritus Amos Wako for that product. My brother Raila and I again were in the forefront in opposing it, and then the birth of the Orange Movement. Susan, you remember, that's how you came in now, when the country was divided between bananas and oranges. Over 1,200 Kenyans lost their lives in less than a month following the announcement of the results of 2007 presidential election, where my brother and Kibaki were tough contenders. I was among them. I used to say nitapita katikati yao. Remember? I looked at these two giants, and I looked at myself as if this David fellow, yeah, Kibaki huyu, Raila huyu, nitapita hapo katikati. And actually, to some extent, I did, because because that is how I was able to hold the two of them again. I became the nexus. I became the gum when the country was falling apart. It is particularly noteworthy that my party then, the Orange Democratic Movement Kenya, I used to say, between me and Raila, we didn't even know how to divide the oranges. Because he kept a whole orange, and I kept an orange and a half. So, my own party then, that time, ODM Kenya, negotiated a post-electoral agreement with President Kibaki's PNU that helped stop the violence, at least, before my brother was brought on board by Kofi Annan. And you know, that was a serious conflict. That is what gave rise to Kenyan leaders going to The Hague. And you know them. And sometimes blame the wrong people. I've had some of them blame Raila. And it's not right at all. I undertook an impossible task of trying to convince the United Nations Security Council to allow us to have Kenyan leaders tried here. And then Kenyans overwhelmingly through local radio stations used to say, don't be vague, go to The Hague. So, under the auspices of Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation Committee, Dr. Kofi Annan, the late brother and a real Pan-Africanist, the chairman of the panel of eminent African personalities, was tasked by the international community and of course the African leadership to help to resolve that political crisis. And on February 1st, 2008, he brought the late Mwai Kibaki and our brother Raila Odinga to the negotiating table, and where the 4 agenda items were agreed upon, namely, Agenda 1, immediate action to stop the violence and restore fundamental rights and liberties. Agenda item number 2, immediate measures to address the humanitarian crisis and promote healing and reconciliation. Agenda item number 3, how to overcome the political crisis. And agenda item number 4, addressing the long-term issues, including undertaking constitutional, legal, and institutional reforms, land reform, tackling poverty and inequality, as well as combating regional development imbalances, tackling unemployment, particularly among the youth, consolidating national cohesion and unity, and addressing transparency, accountability, and impunity. That was a major agenda, and it was to a large extent achieved, except for agenda item number 4. And I must move faster. Agendas 1, 2, and 3 were faithfully carried out. And on February 28, 2008, President Kibaki and Right Honorable Odinga signed the agreement on the principles of partnership of the coalition government. In part, the preamble affirmed, I quote, there must be real power sharing to move the country forward and begin the healing and the reconciliation process. With this agreement, we are stepping forward together as political leaders to overcome the current crisis and set the country on a new path. This agreement is designed to create an environment conducive to such a partnership and to build mutual trust and confidence. We have agreed to enact the National Accord and Reconciliation Act, end of the quote, signed by the 2 leaders. Following the passage of the Kenya Constitution Review Act 2008, Kenya Constitution Amendment Act 2008 by Parliament, the process of drafting a new constitution, detailed in Agenda 4, began. 2 years later, And through a people-driven national dialogue, the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was finally promulgated to widespread acclaim at home, regionally, and internationally. Even though this living document is acknowledged as one of Africa's most progressive constitutions, there are still some aspects of its composition that, in its 13th year of existence, require serious deliberation. We in the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition hold the view that we cannot transform our beloved nation if we do not fundamentally address those Agenda 4 issues of 2008 and those concerns that we have outlined in the National Dialogue Committee, which have christened NADCO, and which I'm happily, as fate would have it, a co-chair. Our top priority, which was to address the cost of living, is demonstrated by the growing gaps in poverty and inequality brought about by harsh and burdensome taxes that take money out of people's pockets rather than putting it therein. And Susan, you're in the business trying to get people to put their money in their pockets. You haven't quite succeeded. Because this is where the issue is. Kenyans are crying, heavy burden of taxation. I have never seen a nation anywhere in the world which can develop on the basis of overtaxing its citizens, particularly during such economic reality. If anybody has one example in the world, we talked of the Marshall Plan and others, where you overtax your citizen in order to get out of depression, I will be happily able to listen to you. Despite the conflicting explanations, the primary causes of economic slow growth, indeed depression, are not solely attributable to global events, but rather economic mismanagement and endemic corruption. The last 3 presidential election results are strongly disputed, indicating that we have not addressed transparency, accountability, and impunity, particularly regarding our electoral management process. That is why we in Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance Coalition insisted upon not only audit of 2022 general election, but a reconstitution of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission. We too in this NADCO process spoke to the deepening of our political gains by ensuring there will be fidelity to the Constitution as regards interference with political parties. The story that has been going on, merry-go-round in Jubilee, I'm a very key member of Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. It's disturbing. We have to call a spade a spade. In these talks, we are not sparing any situation. And we are saying it is improper to disorganize Jubilee, because by disorganizing Jubilee, you are trying to disorganize Azimio, and by implication, paying lip service to multi-party democracy. And this is our view. Our agenda items at the bipartisan talks at Bomas of Kenya also included addressing the imbalance of public office appointments that are biased towards specific communities and poorly represented the aspirations of two-gender rule. This, we strongly argued, continue to undermine the ideals of national cohesion and unity. I would want, for example, a very honest conversation about the recently concluded recruitment at the Kenya Defense Forces. Mukonja and the rest of you in Parliament, please, if you want to heal this country, and I heard the President yesterday say 80% of recruitment to KDF now will be from National Youth Service, but before we get there, we want the statistics, ethnic balance. By the way, it's a matter in the Constitution. We want to know, of the 43 communities, what percentage did the people in Embu in Manyata get? And you will be amazed. And when I dealt with the conflict in Rwanda after the genocide, in fact the problem in Rwanda and Burundi is basically this: 84% of the population are Hutus in both countries, and 14% are Tutsis in both countries. At some stage, the whole leadership of Burundi, from the president to deputy speaker, were eliminated because we went through a hugely successful election, where if it is the majority must have their way and the minority to have their say, that happened. But people were hurting. And what happened? Killings. So, in my view, if you disturb the army, if you do not have a professional military in Kenya or anywhere in the region, ladies and gentlemen, you do not have a country. Please, you can take that one to the bank, even if it is a hustler bank. You cannot disturb if you, and the reason our military men and women have done very well in terms of peacekeeping everywhere, right, is because we have had a professional army. But if you have a tribalized army, and I still insist, I want you guys, if the parliament, I'm told when you people in Kenya Kwanza went to State House and complained to President Ruto that hamwezi kwenda nyumbani, wananchi wanapigia kelele because of taxation, he looked at you and told you, but you are the ones in parliament. Nyinyi ndio mmepitisha the Finance Act. So you now have to play your role. If you're going to do oversighting of this government, and I like the young parliamentarians, actually went in at 30, and I remained there. Yes, I think I should have been a member. Now I'll do the mentoring that our wonderful Mheshimiwa was talking about. I must conclude, ladies and gentlemen, before I invite our brother to come and make his remarks and close this consultative session. You know, we went to bombers because Kenyans lost their lives. Kenyans, some of them wearing sufurias, right? Let's not forget we buried nearly 70 people. Let's not forget a lot of them had their households and everything they owned destroyed. And even as recent as 2 weeks ago, 25,000 people in Mavoko had what they call their homes destroyed. And we hear you friends in Kenya Kwanza telling us affordable housing. What the fellows have put together what they could afford, and you destroy it, and you are telling them affordable housing? So, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot hope to transform our nation, indeed any nation, without meaningful dialogue, and that is built on mutual trust and confidence. Nonetheless, I've observed that during our 73 days, we've already done 73 days of the national dialogue, goodwill has occurred, and both sides have learned to respect one another's points of view. Therefore, I must congratulate my friend, my co-chair, Kimani Chungwa. When he came in, I told Kimani, I looked at him, I said, listen, you are young, I think you're very young, and the future is ahead of you. Me, I can go back to Sekuru, right, and forget about you guys. But if you don't succeed at these talks, history will judge you badly. And we must therefore confront the truth, and nothing but the truth. Our forefathers, the likes of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta and Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, were able to negotiate and compromise even with the British colonialists. When Mzee Jaramogi Oginga Odinga said, without Jomo Kenyatta there will be no freedom. Now, we should emulate them. 26 years ago, the late President Daniel Arap Moi's ruling party, KANU, by the way, KANU was organizing secretary for 12 good years. I was elected national organizing secretary the same day with the late Moses Mundamba Mudavadi, Wycliffe's father. So you can see if Mudavadi is beginning to look old. I started it with his late father. That is a beauty. When you are young, you see it all. And I therefore can pass this information, this wisdom, sometimes lack of it, depending on how you look at it, to the younger leaders. Mzee Moi then was able to accommodate dialogue. After the violence that followed 2007 elections and almost tore our nation apart, Mzee Kibaki, our brother Raila, and indeed myself, with our respective coalitions, were able to come together and work on creating a durable new constitution. Our history is replete with examples of transformative national dialogue for the betterment of all Kenyans. We at Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance Coalition remain optimistic that these bipartisan talks, which should conclude with a report handed to both my friend William Ruto and my brother here on November 22nd. We are very clear. We don't want to stay there for longer than is necessary. And some of them say we are paid huge sums of money. I have not seen a cent. I'm giving my time and my everything to my country so that these things can succeed. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my great pleasure to invite my brother and actually a soulmate, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, to come make his remarks and close this session. Well, we thank our partners, really. You know, Germany, you Kenyans may not know, CD1, the diplomatic corps, the number one, and to get number one CD, diplomatic corps, number one, means a lot. CD1, when we became independent, was Germany. And that tells you that Germans are truly our friends. We thank you. We continue to thank you. And my brother Raila Odinga, karibu sana. Sorry.
Yeah. You may be seated. To the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, hamjambo, hamjambo tena. I am happy to have been invited by Konrad Adenauer Foundation to come and be with you here this afternoon. Dankeschön. That means thank you very much. And I mean, my brother has talked so elaborately about so many things. At some stage, he was talking about desperation in our country. How Kenyans are dying because of lack of food and so on. Then I was telling some other people that maybe death is not a very bad thing. Shakespeare said in Julius Caesar that some cowards die so many times before their death. That the brave do not taste of death but just once. And I want to say that death is a necessary evil that will come when it will come. And therefore there's no need to fear death. Then the other day I was talking to somebody else, he told me, you shouldn't really fear death. He said that, look, if you are sick, there are only two things that can happen to you. Either you will be treated and you will get well, there is nothing to fear. But if you don't recover, then you will die. If you die, there is nothing to fear. Why? Because you will either go to heaven or to hell. If you go to heaven, there's nothing to worry about. You will be okay. Even if you go to hell, there's nothing to worry about. You'll find so many of your friends. So spend a long time just greeting them. How are you? How are you? before your time for the fire comes. So, so therefore, don't fear. You have nothing to fear as Kenyans. We will succeed in the long run. Now, I think this foundation has done a very good thing to choose to hold this conference. And they have told me that they're going to make it an annual event. So it is my real pleasure to speak to this distinguished audience at a time the country is undergoing profound challenges with no end in sight. My task is to share with you the alternative economic pathways proposed by the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party for the people of Kenya. I will do that with pleasure. But before I do that, let me thank the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, Stiftung as it's called in German, for putting together this conference on the subject of transforming a nation. It is proper that a foundation that bears the name of the man who presided over the reconstruction of Germany after the Second World War should get us together so that we can discuss our own reconstruction. I happen to have been in Germany during its days of reconstruction and transformation, and I can say two things without fear of contradiction. First, transforming a nation takes hard, dedicated, and honest labor of leaders and citizens. Secondly, no nation is beyond reconstruction and transformation. All it takes is leadership. And I arrived when the war had ended, the Marshall Plan had been introduced, and the work of reconstruction was in its second phase. I have found when Konrad Adenauer himself was still the Chancellor, and at that time when I arrived, when you went to Germany, and then you went to Britain and France, who were part of the victor powers, you'd think that it was Germany that won the war, and those countries had lost the war. But Germany had been devastated. Most German cities were bombed, some of them nearly to the ground. There's a city in the eastern part of Germany called Dresden. Dresden was razed almost to the ground. But the British, basically, at the time when, in fact, the war had ended, but because of the anger, what had happened, bombing of London and so on, it was a revenge bombing. But the Germans reconstructed. And at that time, West Germany was the strongest economy in Western Europe. And East Germany was also the strongest economy in Eastern Europe at that time. That was basically because of hard work. I want to say that a year after our election, if you ask Kenyans, are you better off today than you were at the time, this time last year? The answer will be obvious, that we are in a deep hole. Failing policies and grim economic prospects. There is a devastating loss of trust and confidence in our economy, our financial markets, and our government. We are caught in a cycle where reduced spending power leads to loss of jobs, which leads to even less spending, where the people can't borrow because the rates charged are too high, yet lack of borrowing slows growth and leads to even less credit. Credible data collected and published by the government confirms all this grim news. And this meeting is taking place as a day after the State of the Nation address by the President. I'm going to try to answer some of the things that he said yesterday. But this is not a response. As the Hustler Fund, which was supposed to support households and micro enterprises, default on payments at a higher rate, around higher rate than those at the commercial banks, SACCOs and microfinance. Out of the Hustler Fund's outstanding, that is 10.2 billion shillings worth of loans in the last 9 months, 29% is deemed to be portfolio at risk, implying it has not been serviced by the borrowers as per agreed schedule. This means that borrowed amounts worth about 2.9 billion shillings in Hustler Fund loans fall in the category of non-performing loans. Job cuts are back to the rate where they were during the COVID. According to the CBK survey, more than a quarter of chief executives expect to cut jobs before the end of the year because of increased operating costs and softening demand for goods and services, setting up families for a gloomy festivities period. The Central Bank of Kenya is the survey that targeted CEOs of more than 1,000 private sector firms through online questionnaires shows that 26.3% of those surveyed expect to cut their workforce between now and the end of the year, while 63.5% will not be hiring any new staff. At the Nairobi Security Exchange, some 6,256 foreign investors fled in the last 9 months. This is 42% of foreign investors in the country. This exodus is a result of the rapid but unstable tax policies that are scaring away foreign investors and leading to low revenue collections. In October, the same National Security Exchange was ranked the worst performing African bars in the first 9 months of the year in dollar returns. Investors prefer a country with a stable taxation policy, a stable currency, and a growing economy. The current regime is changing tax policy frequently, mismanaging the shilling, and weakening economic growth. Kenyans are ditching mobile payments. A number of local SMEs using payment methods such as pay bills and Lipa na M-Pesa are now asking their customers to use cash when paying for goods and services to avoid taxation. Fuel consumption fell rapidly between January and June, dropping to the lowest levels in the more than 5 years. Up to 85% of firms are not paying corporate taxes. At least 8 in 10 companies in Kenya did not pay taxes on earnings last financial year. This signals a tough economic environment that hit sales, prompting some businesses to scale down operations. The Kenya Revenue Authority, KRA, missed its revenue target for the first quarter of the current financial year by 79 billion Kenya shillings. Of course, the story of the Kenya shilling on a free fall bears no repeating. It is obvious to everybody. From 120 to the dollar to now 159. I could go on and on, but I beg to stop there so that we can get into what Azimio thinks. The fact is, Many Kenyans are both anxious and uncertain of what the future holds. The country is going through a recipe of policy mistakes, failures, and shortcomings served in an authoritarian, paternalistic leadership style. Nobody in government cares about building broad public support around these programs. Everything is forced down everyone's throats. In the run-up to 2022 election, we warned that the sectors of every economy are intertwined, and you cannot benefit one sector by denying the other. We warned that Kenya Kwanza was never going to help the hustlers by robbing the rich and the middle class. In the wake of the Finance Act of 2023, we warned that no nation can ever tax its citizens into prosperity. We are concerned that it is getting too late to change the course. We fear that consequences of the foundation laid in the first year of this administration could linger for years if nothing is done. Our country could lose the competitive edge that it has always had in the region and sub-Saharan Africa. This bad situation could easily get out of hand. What is to be done? For us in Azimio, reduction in the cost of living is a priority economic imperative. This will be achieved by providing some basic relief to citizens, including reduction of taxes and stimulating production. To release resources to achieve these objectives, government must cut the budget by an estimated 500 billion shillings. The current policies have hit low-income families particularly hard. These are the same low-income families that the administration promised to lift up. These families spend more than 40% of their income on food. They deserve and require relief. In particular, we must cut fuel taxes and raise social welfare payments. At this time of duress, we demand tax cuts, not increases. Kenyans need to see their taxes go down, not up. We believe the current taxation regime is not sustainable. We warned at the beginning that beyond a certain point, increasing taxes leads to lower collection. It has become real as Kenya Revenue Authority misses one revenue target after another. Tax on fuel is up, but fuel levy collection is down. We were doing this as a result of our experience when we formed government under NASA. Under NASA, we found an economy that was stagnant, and the growth was negative. Revenue collection was very low, and the Paris Club had actually clamped down on the government. So the government was actually just limping. And when we came into government, what we did was to address the two sides of the balance sheet, income and expenditure. We found that the government was collecting 200 billion shillings of all that was being collected. We looked at the sources of revenue, customs duty, income tax, the VAT, and so on. And then the other side, expenditure, how they were procuring. You looked at revenue officers, those officers in the customs, in the income tax department, in the VAT. And procurement officers in all the ministries, they were the boys in town. They're the ones who are buying apartment blocks in town, the ones who are driving the latest models of cars, Mercedes, Toyota, what have you. They're the ones who are building castles in rural areas. They're the ones who are building high-rise buildings in village markets. If you did a lifestyle audit, you're able to catch them. And we did lifestyle audits and caught very many of them. We sacked some we sent to jail. And all of a sudden, revenue rose up. From 200 billion shillings, within the 6 months from January to June, we went up by 100 billion shillings. We collected 300 billion shillings. So you said the answer is not to increase taxes, but to spread out, widen the net, and lower the taxes, and we get more revenue. The following year it went 500 billion, 700 billion, 900, we reached $1 trillion. We were able to finance most of our budget from local resources. We were not having to borrow from donors. 95% of our development expenditure was coming from local revenue. And that's why we were advising the inadvisable that you don't have to increase taxes to get revenue. Procurement, because you can raise revenue, but it all just goes into people's pockets. We found that under Moi, there was a procurement law which said that any item above 100,000 shillings had to be procured competitively. In other words, you had to advertise in at least 3 newspapers, and there must be at least 3 bidders, and you procure competitively. Each and every ministry has a procurement officer seconded from the treasury who was in charge. We found that each procurement officer had 3 companies registered. And there was a kind of a cartel and a collusion. The one in Ministry of Finance is supplying Ministry of Education. The one in Education is supplying health. One is health is supplying roads. One road is supplying agriculture. And if you are the tender, there will be 3 companies. All those 3 belong to one person. And because the building, the commission, which is shared among various commission officers. An item that's supposed to be procured at 100,000 shillings goes for 5 million shillings. And that's where the money is being lost. These ones, again, we did lifestyle audit. We sacked some of them. We jailed some of them. The government was now procuring competitively. And that is how we manage that economy. So you need to stimulate production. Interest rates need to come down in order to stimulate economic activity. This is particularly urgent and critical, given that in the Finance Act of 2023, the regime is pursuing higher spending and taxes for the next 2 years. Businesses will obviously pass the costs to consumers, worsening the cost of living further. We needed to invest in direct relief to individuals through programs that put money directly into the people's pockets. Which is why we asked the Kenya Kwanza to continue with and expand the Kazi Mtaani program. And it can be expanded the way we did it ourselves there, Kazi kwa vijana, to the rural areas as well. Investment in labor-intensive programs like road construction, rural water systems, afforestation, and so on. This has proven over the years to yield positive results. We believe that putting money into construction of schools' infrastructure would yield better returns than the construction of houses through taxation. Kenyans deserve a raise in the average minimum wage. We should also stop mismanagement of public finances. The country must embrace better fiscal discipline. We do not have to increase our budget in order to look important. State departments with overlapping functions need to be scrapped. Why do we have coordination of international development partnerships at both the Deputy President's Office and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, complete with budget lines, while the National Treasury also runs an external resources department? At the same time, we need to stop duplication of devolved functions at national level. You have a situation where the national government is competing with the counties in several other functions which are constitutionally devolved, like health, like agriculture, like water, and so on. Why should the national government be the one procuring fertilizers and distributing it to the county government when agriculture is devolved? How about drugs and so on? A few weeks ago, the Controller of Budget told the country that the National Treasury over-budgeted salaries of state officers, including hers, by 3 times, leading to the loss of over 1 billion shillings. The Controller of Budget detailed how the Treasury has been over-budgeting salaries of senior government officials through the consolidated fund services. So far, nobody has been made to bear responsibility for this budgeted corruption. We know very well that regional authorities duplicate county functions. Where do we retain them? Complete with budgets. To those doubting Thomases within the regime, these measures above will release the estimated 500 billion shillings required to bring back the economy on an even keel. Realistic debt management. Currently, Kenya is caught in a debt rat where it has resorted to borrowing more to repay debt. It makes no sense to us to borrow more to repay debt when debt is already too high. It amounts digging when you're already in a deep hole. Our position is that the National Treasury ought to ask creditors to push up payments falling due to a future date rather than keep paying it. This is what people do when they have a crunch in their finances, but know they can pay later when their income is higher. Rescheduling debt is not at the same time as the same thing as debt default. People default when they are bankrupt. Kenya is not bankrupt. Kenya should not default. By rescheduling debt payments falling due, the government can forgo punitive taxes and create room for critical social and economic spending. In conclusion, 1 year on since the inception of new government, this is the time to reset the economic policy broadly. And you're not going to reset this broadly by mere rhetorics, by talking and making promises to the people, empty promises. The effectiveness of government by key initiatives, including the Hatta Fund, should be reviewed by a forum comprised of the government, political parties, the business community, and the civil society. This is what should be happening. And if this happens, we will be able to come up with proper solution to the problem that we are facing today. The government today is living in denial. If you listen to the State of the Nation address yesterday, if you were talking to some people who are living in planet Moon, you are not being realistic to problems confronting this country. And these problems must be confronted frontally, not by trying to give diversions here and there. We have said today that the cost of living is real and is killing the people. It has to be addressed if you are going to actually relieve the plight of the people of this country. This is our position as Azimio. Now finally, Madam, you've written there, Raila Odinga ran for presidency 5 times and lost 5 times. In other words, and each time he complained that he did not lose. I accepted losing elections in 1997. I said I'd lost and accepted. In 2007, the jury is out there. Everybody knows what happened. In 2013, everybody knows. 2017, people know. 2022, some of you around in the country. The so-called Independent Electoral Boundary Commission had 7 commissioners. Out of those 7 commissioners, 4 said no. 3 are the ones who said yes. But 4 said no. And they even have come before the Kalonzo team and have said no. And they have said that the chairman erred, that up to now he has not published the results of the elections in accordance to the law. And to me, they say that 4 is bigger than 3. If the majority say that I won the elections, I cannot say I lost it. Yes. And this way, irrespective of what the Supreme Court said. I thank you very much.
Another round of applause for our guests this afternoon. Thank you so much for your patience. When you look at your programs were to end earlier, but it was important this final day we stay until this time without wasting so much time. I want to once again welcome Honorable Gitonga Mukunji so that he now finally takes us through the conference communique, some of the resolutions as we go home. Welcome, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Before I read the communique, I have seen some members of parliament who have joined us, and I would like to recognize them. I have seen Honorable Jared Okello. Please just wave to the congregation. That is a member of parliament, Nyando. I have also seen Honorable Junet Mohammed. He is a minority whip and the member of parliament, Suna East. I want to read the communique of this conference, and it is my humble duty to do that. Transforming a Nation Conference Communique. Date November 10th, 2023 in Nairobi, Kenya. Conrad Adenauer Stiftung, KAS, a distinguished German political think tank close to Christian Democratic Party with a presence in over 120 countries worldwide, spearheaded the Transforming a Nation conference held on November 9th and 10th, 2023 at Nairobi's Radisson Blu Hotel in Upper Hill. Rooted in a commitment to fostering democracy and economic
buzz in the first 9 months of the year in dollar returns.
Mutual trust and confidence. We have agreed to enact the National Accord and Reconciliation Act, end of the quote, signed by the two leaders. Following the passage of the Kenya Constitutional Review Act 2008, Kenya Constitution Amendment Act 2008 by Parliament, the process of drafting a new constitution, detailed in Agenda 4, began. 2 years later, and through a people-driven national dialogue, the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was finally promulgated to widespread acclaim at home, regionally, and internationally. Even though this living document is acknowledged as one of Africa's most progressive constitutions, there are still some aspects of its composition that, in its 13th year of existence, require serious deliberation. We in the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition hold the view that we cannot transform our beloved nation if we do not fundamentally address those Agenda 4 issues of 2008 and those concerns that we have outlined in the National Dialogue Committee, which have christened